Yes? No? All right, here we are. Hi, everyone. I'm Rick Zanotti, and this is eBizChat, where it's all about business. There's a lot of stuff happening in business today. I am joined today by our business expert. She's also an economist, a geologist, and who knows what else. She's got tons of stuff. Anyway, it is Dr. Susan Nash. How are you, Susan?
Oh, great. And this is good timing because I'm just back from Thailand where I attended the IPTC International Petroleum Technology Council with like 4,400 people. And that
Wow,
was all about business. And then it headed off Monday to Mexico City for a conference called Energy Opportunities. And it's all about
interesting.
business opportunities. So
Oh,
the
so
world
we,
has
we caught
changed.
her. We caught her in transit. She's got documents and everything
Yes.
with her. Here we go. This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation, digital learning, corporate video, learning design, and management consulting. Visit us at www.relatecasts.net. Thanks. And we are back, and we're not. Yep, we're in the right place. All right. We are back. And, Susan, you have really been globetrotting over the last month or so, or maybe 2 months. You've been on the road a lot.
I have. It started in February, well, January 31st. Went to the North America Prospect Expo, which is all about business opportunities, their catchphrases, where deals happen. But that
Hmm.
was in Houston. So that was a really good North America perspective. And it was jam-packed. People are optimistic. Things were happening in terms of people wanting to get together post-COVID, face-to-face, and start to do business. Now, what kind of business was not all that clear.
Ah. And then you recently were in Thailand.
Yes, so the International Petroleum Technology Conference is a big multi-society show between the Society of Petroleum Engineers, geologists AAPG, where I am, and SEG, Society of Exploration Geophysicists, and they come together for a technical program. But what's most interesting is you get the top executives coming in from different countries, primarily Asia Pacific, and so you get the heads of the Thailand company, PTTEP and Petronas, and then you get also so they get the national oil companies, you get the independent oil companies, the so-called IOCs like ExxonMobil and BP, and then a lot of large service companies. And their perspective and their outlook was so refreshing compared to, say, what we hear in the United States about petroleum and products or natural gas.
That's interesting. Now, something interesting came out in the news. I think it was either yesterday or today. I heard it today. And that is Xi Jinping in China has now invited countries to become part of their economic growth. I didn't catch the name of the exact program, but it's like an economic growth thing where
Is it the Belt
they
and
will.
Road?
What's it called? I don't think
The
that was
Belt
it. I
and
think
Road?
no.
Oh,
I think it was.
okay.
I think it has a different name now. But
Hmm.
basically, they help you grow. They become your partners. They don't want to make any social or cultural changes to your country. They want to be the antithesis of the dictatorial, tyrannical kind of nut job World Economic Forum types. This is interesting because here you're
Hmm.
getting more benefits with none of the craziness attached to it. Like you will eat bugs and love it, all that kind of stupidity. Um, so this is very interesting. So now you've got a counterweight to what the frankly nut jobs are doing, and that's going to be pretty fascinating to see how that turns out. China does have more money than just about everybody, even though they're greatly in debt, just like we are. Um, it's interesting. Have you heard anything about that at all?
Well, did hear a lot of things about people were investing and getting investments from China, but what was hearing and China partners with a lot of energy
Yes.
projects in Southeast Asia. But what was fascinating to me is that the view of energy in Southeast Asia, they are working with what's called the trilemma. So it's like the three-pronged dilemma between balancing energy supply or and affordability and then sustainability. And in there, they're focusing on making sure that they have enough supply and have enough, and it's affordable for their burgeoning population. So then, what you have on top of that is the sustainability, and so they do that. So there's some massive projects for capturing carbon from like cement plants and then injecting it into a reservoir to take it out of the CO2 out of the atmosphere, avoid emissions. So those are called CCUS plants, and so they have or CCS. So we have a lot of CCS projects that are massive. So there's massive investment in offshore drilling, in these CCUS projects, in pipelines and infrastructure, and in order to, and I'm sure that there's significant investment from China.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they're definitely going into a lot of countries making these offers. The biggest differentiator is we don't want to change you. We want to help you
Yeah.
become more productive, which helps us and helps everybody else. It stands to play much better than the current noise we're hearing from the European side, which is an absolute disaster mess right now. Um, what do you think about that?
Well, I do agree that a lot of financing for infrastructure projects and energy projects has had massive strings attached.
Mm-hmm.
And it's especially in Europe where they have the carbon registry and
Right.
you buy into carbon credits, which is, um, well, it's I guess it sounds good, but sometimes when somebody's green, it just means that they bought a lot of interest in tree farms.
Right. Right.
And so they have these carbon offsets. And this unproductive use of money. I mean, if there are better ways to directly attack um, carbon emissions, and one is to just reward it and invest in cleaner, better technology up front. And and so in Europe, people have not been able to do anything without proving that they are carbon neutral. And there's this carbon management scheme in place. And I mean, I applaud, again, applaud keeping saving the planet, obviously, but again, there's a lot of effort. What are the real results? Whereas it looks like in the case of what you're describing, there's more direct investment and an emphasis in improving people's lives.
Yeah. Now, as long as they don't loan money to Argentina, I think they're good. If yeah, otherwise, it's over. It's over. It's a scam. Um, it's a joke. Um, Susan and I always talk about the Chinese will never win in Argentina because they're so good at scamming people. The, I think what is it? The IMF has, I forgot how many billions they've loaned Argentina over the last, I don't know, 50 years. They've never paid anything back really. So it's sort of interesting. And they keep getting more. Here's another 35 billion. Here's another 40 billion. Here's 50 billion. Oh, thank you. Nothing happens. So it's interesting.
I think that we have to be kind of like, oh, I don't know. There was a book that I read that really made a lot of sense. It's called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And
Hmm.
it was about a guy who went out and he negotiated these big infrastructure projects in U.S. aid to different countries. And he said that those really were, they looked like really great things. The countries bought into and they were supposed to generate jobs, et cetera. But what happened is that the country got indebted. They got the infrastructure, but everything was done with U.S. technology, U.S. So it was like a variation of the Marshall Plan,
Mm-hmm.
and it stimulated American companies. Well, I mean, it's fairly benign, except for like the debt, I guess. It's fairly benign. Now, the complaints with the Belt and Road Initiative are that It sounds like a really great way to get infrastructure, but literally generates no jobs.
Mm,
They send crews of Chinese, and they send all the instructions, all the cement, all the equipment is from China, and it's all in Chinese. So it's very challenging to repair, but the it's a very good economic stimulus for China, and it helps the Chinese businesses.
right.
So, I mean, I think that, one has to look to see what is it really a veiled economic stimulus program for China? It could be a win-win, but I'm just saying that, it's good to keep your eyes open.
Right, right. And it's only recently been unveiled, maybe as soon as yesterday. I'm not sure. So it'll be interesting to see what countries buy into it. Did you hear that, for example, Poland just is getting out of the NATO? That's one thing. That's sort of interesting. Other companies there's a list of countries that want to get out of Europe. So
Well,
that's going to
isn't
be
Poland
interesting
next
too.
to Ukraine? I think they're looking at their neighbors and
Yeah.
kind of maybe shivering in their boots. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't think it's a good decision on that. I don't know. It's probably not a bad decision. NATO has its own
I don't
issues.
know. I don't know, but it's just there's I don't know. There's so much that's destabilizing in the world. And when I was listening to people talking in these different plenary sessions, they all related to, like, well, last year we had one view of the world. Then post
Hmm.
Ukraine, we have another view. And that has it changed people's views of energy. In fact, it's starting to change it in the US, where it's not, okay, we have to eliminate one right away. It's now, okay, we need to transition. We need to do all of the above kind of energy.
Now, when you were in Thailand, what was the biggest difference you saw in the way they approached energy and continued energy availability rather than just shutting down pipelines for no mental reason whatsoever? What what prompted you to think it was positive and good?
Well, the view of long-term view of growth and building capacity. Right now, we have restrictions on our ability to start up, say, for example, offshore Gulf of Mexico
Mm,
projects.
hmm.
And the thing is it's going to be like, from exploration to first oil, it can be 5 to 10 years. And so and one example of that is ExxonMobil's long-term investment in Guyana. It's turned out to be great for them, and they've had a lot of success, but they had to really go in for the long term and be able to weather the ups and downs of commodities. And in Thailand, or in the Southeast Asia, you see a lot of national oil companies saying we are doing this to provide our country with energy security and affordable energy, and we're doing it in a sustainable green way. And so they're importing LNG. They're getting all the natural gas they can,
Mm.
um, and view that as a bridge. Here, who knows how we view it, because it varies from state to state.
That's true. Though the current administration is very anti-energy, at least any kind of commonsensical energy, um, especially gas. They've not done well with gas at all.
And I understand that, and nobody wants to have methane leaks, but
Sure.
and a positive thing, they are dedicating a lot of money to detecting and cleaning up, like, really really big hazards, and kind of like Superfund types
Hmm.
of things.
Hmm.
That's good, but that's not really helping us with our supply. And and what happens when you are trying to make sure that everybody has an electrical EV, but that you are not allowed to charge it because you're overloading the system, and it will cause blackouts.
Also, the funny thing about that is you overload the system and you create a lot more pollution from the batteries than you would with gas or petroleum. It doesn't make any sense, but uh, some facts are ignored a lot. Um, do you see any changes here coming up? Any? I know there's probably people trying to do things not so much in sight because you can get shut down pretty quickly. Anything happening here as far as the? Well, actually, let me
Yeah,
rephrase that. I just thought of something. We don't really have our backup petroleum anymore. I think all of it's been consumed, if I'm not wrong. What was up in
I think
Alaska?
that right, and I think well, and they have the like they had the oil stored in the salt domes and stored in the domes
Yeah.
in Michigan, I believe. But I think that replenishing the strategic reserve is obviously really important. I
Yeah.
do see a lot of changes in I see changes in attitudes toward geothermal and lots of investment in things like geothermal and lots of investment in CCUS projects
Hmm.
here in the US. Um, and there's a bit of a concern that there may be a little bit of, well, it's attracting people that are a little bit over enthusiastic. And so there's a bit of hype in
Mm.
some of the areas saying, well, we can just go from here to geothermal 100%. Not with current technology
Right.
and not with current geology, geological realities.
Yeah. So what do you see? What do you see as the near-term future for fuels over here? Whether it's storage, whether it's for housing, whether it's for cars, vehicles, manufacturing. What's happening?
Well, I think that one thing last Friday, the Wall Street Journal or it was Thursday, had an article that said, Permian Basin is dead. And that was from a panel that was at CERAWeek in Houston.
Hmm.
There's like C-suite type of people. And they oversimplified the argument, but the argument is that our largest reserve of oil and gas is in the Permian Basin in southwestern Texas and southeastern New Mexico. And and those and what's happened since 2015 when the price collapsed and you had a lot of chaos in terms of companies going bankrupt, et cetera, is that there's a lack of investment.
Hmm.
So here we are, 8 years later, wondering why there's decline. It's like it's true that the reserves are lower, but it's also true that there's not as much drilling, and there's not as much investigation in terms of new technologies, how to get more out. And Saudi Arabia is really doing everything they can in terms of investment to go back into their old fields and get out what's remaining.
Now, let me ask you a final question for today. We're talking about the reserves. There's a lot of stuff happening in the Middle East where Saudi Arabia is starting to take kind of a leadership role in terms of um, BRICS for one. So we're looking at BRICS again. It hasn't gone away, and yes. Oh, that Cherish is our producer. I thought she was saying something. Um, and versus the petrodollar seems to be on the uh, verge of extinction. Where do you see with going on with that? Because that's again affecting markets.
I don't really know. I know a lot of people have talked about Bitcoin and blockchain and smart
Mm.
contracts. I think that there was fear for a while that everything was going to go to like Bitcoin or some equivalent,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that that's essentially not the case. But I do think that some kind of dollars or I mean that's been a debate that's been on for a long time. In fact, wasn't that one of the pretexts for um, one of the things that people were saying that was happening in like late 2000s is that they were threatening to go. Libya was threatening
Right.
to. Anyway, that's a discussion that's been going on for a long time, and I don't know. I really don't know.
It's going to be interesting. Well, Susan, you're off to Mexico next week.
Yes, it's a conference called Energy Opportunities, and it's bringing together um, opportunities. Governments are showing what kinds of um, bid, how to get into their bid rounds, et cetera. And then there are panel discussions talking about different new technologies, transitional technologies, CCUS, geothermal, hydrogen, et cetera. And then I'm organizing something called the New Technology Showcase,
Hmm,
where we are having presentations and panel discussions about new technologies.
that's great.
And so a lot of it's analytics, a lot of it's like equipment.
That's great. Well, Susan, safe travels. We hope you come back with some good and interesting information. Mexico seems on the brink of really turning itself around. They've got what seems like amazing leadership for a change. And he wants the country, this is Obrador, Obrador, who wants the country to be very productive, very competitive, and to do things well. I think he wants to get off the narco dollar, if you will, and clean up the country. From what he's doing so far, it seems like he's doing a good job.
Yeah, I hope so. It will be interesting to hear and read things while I'm there.
Yeah, yeah. Then you hear what the people really think. Anyway, well,
Yeah.
thanks for coming on today, and we will be back next week with another episode of eBiz Chat. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.